we have here? Do we have everyone?
Yeah, I think we have everybody. It's so amazing to see you all. I just wanted, before I let Angela and Melody take over everything, which by the way, thank you both so much for hosting us today. I know they mentioned that we'll record and it'll be part of the podcast episode too, so that'll be super cool. So we can memorize it for forever. But I'm so excited to have everybody here. I know that I mentioned it a lot in email, and I wanted to make sure to say it out loud. But I am so honored, like truly, truly honored to have worked with you all on this anthology. Like it would not be here without all of you. Like all the stories have just been phenomenal. Like truly, truly, like thank you all so much for being a part of it. It's so exciting to finally be able to celebrate its release. Like I feel like I ran into an email the other day that was from like September 2022 about this. Oh, there's Eric. Eric. Yes, Eric. Yay. Hi, Eric.
Hey, everyone.
So, Eric, I was just telling everybody that I'm so honored to have worked with you all on the anthology. Thank you so much, for being a part of it.
We just let her, Eric. We just let her do this. We just let her lay it on us, and we're like, okay.
Just said yes.
More praise, more praise.
Sandra.
Yeah, just keep it coming. Okay, by the way, guys, like, no, really though, like it's like it's just so amazing. Like it really is a dream. And this is my first, traditionally published thing out in the world. And it couldn't have been like something, as cool as Relit. Like it's just so cool to have gotten a chance to work with all of you. It's so cool. I know we lost like all of our editors along the way. That's been like so hard, but I feel like every time that happened, everybody just stayed so positive, and we were so lucky to have worked with Stephanie and Megan and Carolina, and it's just been a dream, even with a little bit of the hiccups and all that jazz. And we get to celebrate today, which is really exciting. And before I let Melody and Angela take over, like Tori, you had told me, and I do remember, because I wrote it down, I made sure to remember that you wanted me to remind you to tell us what it was that your mom had said makes Relit matter so much. So before I let Angela and Melody take it away, I felt like that was just the perfect way to start today, our chat. And so I wanted you to tell us what your mom had said that makes Relit matter so much.
Yeah, my mom, she comes from an era that we all know, a lot of our ancestors and our elders didn't have the access and the opportunities that we have. And oftentimes they were sidelined and they were unseen and they were unheard. So my mom's journey as a Latina in Brooklyn, she kind of shared part of it with me. I was a part of this conference that happened at El Museo de Barrio, and it was the first Afro Latinx conference of its type. It was huge. So I had to bring my mom, right? And I bring my mom, and at the very end of the conference, we all get together for a picture, and I'm looking over and I see my mom bawling. I'm like, what's she crying about? And then when I go over to her, she said, I spent my whole life feeling like white people don't want us in the picture. And if we were in the picture, we would shove it aside. And it was the first time seeing Latinos and Latinas as the stars. Mm-hmm. And so my mom, she passed away, rest in peace. But I know if there's bookstores in heaven, she's reading her copy of Relit, because Relit did what the conference did, and it did what put pride in my mom, that you're taking us and putting us front and center alongside classics, retellings of the classics, in a way that just shines light on the literary luminary constellation that is the Zoom, and that is this anthology.
I love that.
I got a home. You're making me cry.
That's beautiful. And there better be bookstores in heaven. I hope they're reading our stories. We're out there working hard.
It's only heaven if there's books up there.
Well, I guess we'll take it from here. Tori, thank you for sharing that. And honestly, a huge congratulations to all of you guys. This anthology is stunning. I mean, from the cover alone, it catches your eyes, but once you open the book and get to read the stories inside, I mean, it honestly is gorgeous in every single way and powerful and fun. It's so fun. I guess I should introduce myself before I get into it. I'm Angela Montoya, author of Sinner's Isle, and I co-host of the Publishing Persuasion with Melanie Schubert. And we've been lucky enough to have a few of you on the show, which is really, really cool. And I follow some of you and I see some of you guys through Las Musas. And so it's really, really amazing. And I'm very grateful to be here celebrating with you because Relit truly is something special. And it 100% is being read up in heaven or wherever we all go and being celebrated. And I just so thrilled. And yeah, so we're happy to host this. I know Melanie was listening to the audiobook.
I was.
Yeah.
And oh my goodness, you all are coming in hot. Like seriously. So if you don't know me, I'm your friendly Croatian Australian, Melanie Schubert. And yeah, we're so honored to have you guys on. And I did immediately download the audiobook, and the voiciness, the sheer voiciness that I've already witnessed is honestly like remarkable. Like I am hook, line, and sinker, your fangirl at this point.
Yeah. I think that's pretty easy. I think once everybody reads this book, you guys will have fan girls all over the world, all over the globe. I think we'll get into introductions in just a second for all of you guys, because everybody wants to know who you are and what you've done and the story that you have written for this anthology. But first, I think we want to ask Sandra a quick question, which is, how did this amazing concept for Relit come to be?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while, so let me try to like refresh my memory, because again, it's been like it's been longer than it's literally been a couple years since it even went out on submission. And at the time, I'll be super candid, where I was just like, what else could I take on submission? I have a middle grade on submission, I have like a YA on submission, like what can I take out on submission? And while I was trying to figure it out, I was like, okay, anthology is like, and will somebody even pick up an anthology that would be a debut project for somebody? I don't know. But you know what? I'm going to give it a go. And I chatted with my agent, and we were trying to figure out, what I would even do. And I have a background in project management, so I felt pretty confident in myself being able to, handle the project management side of the anthology. And when I was trying to, of course, when I was like, okay, what would he would do? Of course, the first thing was like, it would be a Latinx anthology, like no doubt about that. So that was like the first thing, I kind of got out of the way. But every anthology kind of has to have a hook, right? And during this time, as many of us probably remember, there was a huge conversation about classics. It was the time when Barnes and Noble put people of color on their books, and we were all just kind of like, what is going on? Like, really, that's kind of the point where we're at. Instead of having stories, that we can make our new classics, people were thinking of refreshing them and just putting people of color on the cover and just calling it like, this is what we have now. And of course, that I wasn't a fool that didn't work for me. Obviously, I feel like we need something that our kids and our Latinx kids and really all kids can kind of see themselves in. And the whole point of the anthology is for Latinx kids to see themselves as the heroes of their own stories. And that's really what the whole anthology has revolved around, is giving the opportunity to really center Latinx teens inside of these stories. And then beyond that, just making it as diverse as I could, just bring on as many, different voices, because I think we talk a lot about that the Latinx experience isn't a monolith. And so that was kind of the third aspect of it, right? It's just making sure that we have so many different fabulous voices involved. And I feel like I feel so lucky that I managed that project management background again. It was clutch. It came through. And I was, and that's really the background, is just trying to give Latinx voices and Latinx kids an ability to see themselves and really see themselves in these classics that have been remixed and retold with all of your amazing, beautiful voices. and to hopefully give Latinx kids and really all kids a chance to kind of see these classics in a new light and new breath. And of course, I have a background where I love science fiction and fantasy, and so that was probably like the first wheel of it. Is just I want to make sure that it's fun. And Angela, you mentioned like it's a ride, right? And so I wanted to make sure that kids can have fun with these stories too. And so that's a little bit of a background about Relit and how it came to life. And we were so lucky that Stephanie Cohen and when Stephanie acquired it for Inkyard, that was one of the things that Stephanie had said. Like Stephanie understood it. They really saw like the work that had been put like in the background, and so that was something that I really appreciated from Inkyard. And I feel like Inkyard was kind of the perfect home for us, was to have somebody who really understood the whole point of it. And so that's been really, really cool. I'll stop rambling now.
No, I honestly just love listening to you and watching you talk about just like writing in general, but this project, it's like your passion and your fire for it. And I'm sure like everyone who's worked with you on it has just like felt that, it shows in everything. So please ramble. We love it's not rambling, it's sharing stories and wisdom nuggets.
That's it.
So yeah, like
I love that.
But I guess what we want to know is about these wonderful stories that you've all chosen to remix. So, I mean, I'm just going to start with the faces I can see on my screen. Can you tell us the story you chose? Like, why did you choose that? So maybe I'll start with Nonika. Just to put you on the spot. You were shining on my screen with your beautiful spotty background there.
So many things. I think firstly, listening to Sandra, when I write YA, it's generally to be a conduit for my rage. So I look at these kinds of things as an opportunity to do something for the kids. And I know it sounds strange that it comes from the Raven, but right now, as we speak in real time, Rockingham County, which is right near me, is trying to mandate teachers to out their students, not only by pronouns, but by nicknames. So if any kid is using even a nickname that is not their name, they're required to get parent permission in case they're queer. So, starting off with the Raven, this is a story of devastation. This poem is about somebody who thinks they're never going to ever be with their love again. And it's beautiful because he was that in love, right? And it's tragic because this Raven is saying you're never going to have that again. And the parallel is these kids who they think they have the love of their family and their community, their parents, and they're being told you're not going to have that simply because of who you are. And so that's my parallel of why my brain went there, besides the fact that I'm obsessed with Edgar Allan Poe and always have been. So there's that. And I think the other portion of that you mentioned earlier, which is sci-fi, and I think a lot of us can speak to playing with genres. It was a really beautiful opportunity to play that Sandra, you gave us. We've all grown up with these stories. And as much as they may have had rich or beautiful symbolism and all these kinds of things, we're always on the outside of them, on the outside of the structures, giving things that didn't resonate with us in 100,000 ways, but we were expected to learn or fail. For many kids, learn those classics so you don't get into school, you don't get into college. I mean, I think it's really powerful what we're done here because we're being told, kids are being told, we were told we were younger, if we don't master these things. I was told I was going to be in the gutter. Okay. So, you have to master the canon. You have to pass school. And what's past school mean? Doing these stories. So us getting to redo them is amazing. So I guess I'll kind of stop by saying like, this was my way of kind of planting that pride flag out there, but on the moon. Okay. So for the kids to see it, I think we're all planting these flags for the kids to go, I can see you. And we know you're out there. And we're sending these rafts out with these stories, and all this turmoil that's going on right now.
That's beautiful, powerful, honestly. How about you, Eric? Why did you choose the story you did to remix? Hi, Eric. How are you?
Oh, hi. Sorry, I'm like mainlining cough drops right now. It's that season right now. So I chose 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. So when I was a little kid, my parents got me those, and I'm sure some of you remember these, but they were called like the Great Illustrated Classics, and they were like these white chunky hardcovers that had all these big illustrations in them. I had a whole big set of them because they did not know how to handle the the bookish child who didn't want anything to do with sports, which certainly broke my dad's heart. And I remember I was in like fourth or fifth grade, and like, look, I'm Honduran, I'm Palestinian, I'm Sicilian, I'm genetically a very hairy person and a very hairy child. So I had to start shaving when I was like 10 years old. It was this whole very embarrassing thing. And I remember reading 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and here's this brown guy with a big beard who felt a lot like me, particularly because in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Captain Nemo he's a man without a country, right? He's wandering the ocean in the Nautilus. There's a whole big thing about it in there, and like I don't think I really understood it that much as a kid, but I understood it enough to really just like lock on to this character. And as an adopted person who's been, very raised outside of the culture of my birth family, is the most relatable thing of all time. Like, oh, here's this guy, doesn't have a country, wandering around. It doesn't really feel accepted anywhere. Like that was me as a kid. That's me now as I'm trying to reclaim that identity as an adult now that I'm getting more familiar with it. So I latched onto that story, and I wanted to tell it in my own way. So in my version of the story, we meet an adopted kid who's on board a ship in sort of a horrifying post-climate change era, who feels out of place, who feels definitely without a country because he's stuck on this boat with the family that's adopted him. And he's still trying to search for that sense of home. And that's really what the whole story is telling. And that's what 20,000 Leagues of the Sea told to me when I was a small, hairy, confused child. So that is what I went with.
Yes, I actually started yours this morning, and I have this line that I wrote. It's not always the world that crushes you. Sometimes you do it for them. Don't do that. I like highlighted that. I was like, that was freaking powerful. There's a few little notes I started to write because, like I said, y'all came in hot with these stories. So I may jump in now and then and just lavish my wow at you all because, yeah, they're really powerful stories, and I'm so impressed. And thank you for sharing that with us. It's really like, yeah, love Jules Verne. Love it even more now.
Thank you.
Now, Amparo, I can't see you on my screen, but I know you're there. So I'm going to ask you next, which story did you choose and why?
That is the story of my life. They cannot see me, but they know I'm there. Hello, everyone. I retold Oscar Wilde's The Nightingale and the Rose. And essentially, I chose it because I'm an ESL professor by day. And one of the readings that I actually have for my students is that specific story, because I know that a lot of my students, they struggle with reading in general, but specifically in Spanish because it's our first language. However, when it comes to reading in English, they might consider it more intimidating until I start talking about heartbreak and love that doesn't actually become mutual eventually. And they're like, oh, interesting. What happened? Who broke whose heart, etc. So I felt like it was a good story to include. And it's always my students' favorite story to read with me. And I realized that it was also one of my favorite stories I've ever read. And so essentially, the original is about a very, very small nightingale who sees a college student crumble because he wants to get a dance or have a dance with his crush. And his crush told him that in order to dance with her at the ball, he had to find the reddest rose ever, but it's wintertime, so his options are quite limited. And in my retelling, the main character is the nightingale, which would be La Cotorra, and she's a shapeshifter who helps the bruja of the island. She's basically coming in, putting everyone under this horrible wintry spell, and she has captured my main character's crush. So in order for my main character to free her crush from his sleeping curse, she has until dawn to find her a flamboyant flower. So it's similar to the rose, but very much Puerto Rican in that sense.
That sounds amazing. And I love how you twisted it just to add your own culture and also like a nod to your students, which is so beautiful and powerful. And I hope they all get a copy so they can read it.
No, I hope not. Well, they can read your stories, not mine. Not mine.
Just cross
Not
out
allowed.
yours. Cross
Not
out
allowed.
yours.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, exactly.
I love it. Okay, how about you, Monica? Tell us a little bit about why you chose the story you did to remix.
Of course. Hi. Well, I chose Jane Eyre. I'm pretty much obsessed with that story. I always tell everyone, I'm like, it's the soundtrack that's in my car and I play it all the time, and my kids just kind of like roll their eyes whenever they get on and hear it. But I've always just loved Jane Eyre since the first moment I read it. I loved her war between right and wrong, between her faith and society and her role. The gender roles at that time. So that was something I latched on to when I did my retelling, where you have this almost like a witchy secret agent that's helping others who are hiding their true selves. So I mean, when Sandra approached me with the opportunity, I immediately knew it was like, I need to do Jane Eyre. It's like my moment has come. And that I really wanted to touch on that, which really resonated with me since I first read it, just having the freedom to like be yourself and what happens when you hide that, which is, I don't want to spoil the story, but a very big part of my retelling.
It's so exciting hearing them all. And that one sounds amazing as well. Now, one I did start this morning, David, I'm looking at you somewhere on the screen. It's also across. I should have made the screen with all of our faces, but here we are. We can change it if we want. So you remixed Hamlet, correct?
Right, I sure did. I've been a big fan of the play since I was like in high school, but I think one of the reasons I was drawn to it is because it was so similar to my own life, of a pretty intelligent, bookie kind of kid, absent father, family falling apart, the community seems to be destroying itself. And it's definitely a very angsty story. I think it's one of the reasons that angsty emo teen, I was like, really, I was into it. And I wanted to take that story, and I had kind of like been playing around with different notions of how to adapt it into a present day Latina community and Mexican American community on the border. But this gave me an opportunity to go, ooh, in space. And so I started thinking about, I want to see, Latina people hundreds of years from now. We won't call ourselves Latinx people anymore. We'll have other names for ourselves. And so trying to think about what that would be like. We're on Mars, we're in the Samaria region. What's our lives like? And how can I take the structure of the story and project both, like maybe Mexican Americans, but also like Sephardic Jews who speak Ladino and have, roots in our culture as well into this, and use that as the background. So it was a lot of fun, like just creating the cultural milieu, and then going, okay, so I'm doing science fiction. How do I handle the ghost of Hamlet's father? What do I do there? And how can I use technology? And then if, once I decide to make him a literal ghost in the machine, his personality imprinted on the robot, then what are the implications for that, for the ending of that play that, ends so tragically in Shakespeare's version? I don't want, my Latine protagonist and his girlfriend to end the same way. I want to give them hope. I want our story to be a little more uplifting and more triumphant. And so I was able to use a little bit of that sci-fi to come up with to re-engineer an ending that would be more hopeful and triumphant. So it was a lot of fun doing it. It really was. And I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, well, I love me some Hamlet, and that angst, like, I was in high school as well, being like, I should be bored, but I'm really feeling this in my deep bones right now. So I love that. I can't wait to finish that story.
It sounds amazing. Truly, it feels like this entire anthology is just a celebration of like, I finally get to write this thing that I've always loved and remix it into my own. And so it's beautiful and powerful. Alex, do you mind telling us why you chose the story you chose?
Yeah, so much like David in his emo phase, I was also an extremely grumpy 16-year-old goth. So that is obviously my favorite short story. And as soon as Sandra asked me, I was like, oh, Herman Melville, of course. Now, when I tell people Bartleby the Scrivener, they're like, ¿Quién? who is this? So it made an impact on me, this story, which is about, please don't leave, lawyers in the 19th century. Nobody leave. So, but what impacted me about the original Bartleby the Scrivener is that it's really a story that the way I see it, so the story is basically in this law office, this lawyer's office, a law clerk gets hired and gradually he refuses to do work. And all he will say is, I prefer not to. And for my 16-year-old, very goth heart, it just seemed like the biggest act of rebellion to say no to something. I mean, my parents are immigrants. To say no to them, to say no to what they wanted for us, to say no to what, porque estás en la calle? Why are you out on the street again? Like that, like every other American teen. That to say no to that seemed like seismic. And I also felt like I connected with that energy of wanting to opt out of expectations. And also Bartleby, even in the original, like he's kind of like messing up the cog of capitalism. I know I'm putting a lot on Herman Melville. He probably didn't think it was, but that's what I thought of. He is just putting it like, no, it's not going to work the way you are. And I'm going to do it in the most like Pacific way I can. I'm just going to say no. So that was my starting point for my story, Prefiero No, which is about a young girl, Grace, who has just done her entrance sort of audition for the School of Visual Arts, and she's gotten essentially a no. And so I wanted to tell the story of what happens after the no, and if you can get from the no to saying yes to yourself. So there is a trip on a New York City bus. There is a time warp, little time loop kind of thing happening, and a trip to one of my favorite New York City museums, the Cloisters in Fort Tryon Park. So yeah, everything I love.
They just all sound amazing, like seriously. Who have we not gotten to yet? Oh well, Sandra, we haven't done yours yet.
Oh, do we want to go me? Sure. Okay, so mine, I always love hearing everybody else's reasons why they chose the story, because it's always like, I really love this story. And then when we get to me, I'm just like, I chose it because I don't like this story. But really, I chose The Old Man in the Sea because it's so funny. Anna Mariano, who's not here today, has been doing these video reviews of everybody's stories on Instagram, which have been just incredible. But today they did my story, which is The Old Man in the Sea, and Ariel hadn't read it yet, and Anna was like, it's just a story about an old man that's kind of like, like, who wants to read that, right? Like, that's really like the reason why I chose The Old Man in the Sea, though. It's because, like, honestly, candidly, when I was story to write, I asked my husband, I was like, hey, what story should I write? He was like, you should write The Old Man in the Sea. It's like my favorite story. And that's the thing, though, right? It's like, he's like a mid-30-year-old man, and that's his favorite story. And why are teens being basically forced to reading the story that like is the favorite story of a 30-year-old, mid-30s-year-old man? And so that's really the reason why I chose the story, was to be able to give it like a fresh life. It's this story that it could be fun in the right light, right? And so many teens will grow up and maybe it'll be one of their favorite stories as well. But I felt like for the teens of today, I just wanted to kind of take it and just give it a fresh spin. And so my story, The Old Man in the Sea, the story, the original is about an old man who is a fisherman, and he goes out and he decides to go fishing alone one day, and he ends up catching the biggest catch ever and has to figure out how to get it back home alone. And so a lot of things, not necessarily great things, happen to him on the way back, and trying to take this giant fish that he catches home. And so in my story, instead of the sea, I made it a desert. Instead of I can't remember when it's set, the original is set, but I put in the future, and it's post-apocalyptic world, and it's about a girl. It's about a girl who basically has to figure out how to find this treasure, this tesoro in the desert, and bring it back home in order to figure out because scavenging is the way that her family is surviving now in this future. And so I really wanted to make sure that the story was about a teenager, you know, the teenager Mimi, and a lot of the things I think that teens grapple with today is a lot of heavy lifting, right? And so that's kind of what the story is about. It's about heavy lifting, but I won't give away like the whole story or the ending, but at the end it's really showing teens hopefully that they can ask for help. And that's kind of like the biggest thing. Like, don't try to do everything yourself sometimes, because sometimes like you really do just need help. And there's going to be people that love you and people that will support you and your community behind you always. And so I'm hoping that at the end of the story, that's really what teens take away. And you know, hopefully not hopefully, but sometimes they'll be forced to read the Old Man of the Sea. But hopefully, along with that, they're also checking out this story and they're getting a chance to learn from it. Because even the Old Man of the Sea, like they've asked him before, like what, you know, it's by Ernest Hemingway. They've asked him like, what's the point of the story? And he's kind of just like, there is no point. It's like, okay, like if there is no point, like why do we even, you know, concentrate on it? Like, let's give teens stories that have, you know, that they resonate with and they'll learn from and they'll find a point in. So that's really the story behind DeSoto.
Powerful. We need to find a way to get Relit into every classroom. I'll figure this out. I'll call somebody, figure this out. It's got to happen because I mean, truly, the stories, not only are they really interesting and fun and how you guys remix them, but there's deeper themes here that are really interesting to explore and powerful, especially for teen readers. So again, thank you guys for writing this. Let's see. I'm trying to see who I see here. Saricia, what did you write and why?
Yeah, so when Sandra reached out to me about being a part of this anthology, I was super excited, but all of the good stuff was already taken, and I was like, well, what's the one thing that I've always wanted to, you know, dip my hand into retelling, but have been afraid, sort of, and also I haven't really seen any retelling of it. Goldilocks. And so I wrote her and I was like, what do we think? Do we think this? And she was like, yes, do it. No one's ever done it. And I'm like, okay, I don't know how this is going to turn out. But then we added vampires and we put the setting in the Bronx. And those are my favorite things. So I feel like the story kind of took off from there. But yeah, it follows a teen who goes to a house party, and I think the title kind of gives it away, the three, you know, Goldie and the three dead bodies. So no spoilers, but I had so much fun weaving, the Bronx onto the page and sort of inserting some vampires into the world of Goldilocks. I wouldn't say it's like a spot on retelling, but it was pretty fun to play around with it. So thank you for trusting me and letting me do this as a retelling. It was so much fun.
Sounds absolutely wild.
It's very wild.
Vampires and the Bronx, like, come on. This is like, we all need this. It sounds incredible. And then I think last but not least, back to Tori.
Hey, why did I write this story? Trespassers will be, because Sandra reached out and she named all the other contributors. She named David Bowles and Saracia and others, you know, Alex and Nonieka, just the names. I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna write, but count me in. And so for me, being a part of Relit was like Miles Morales. I'm wearing the Miles Morales shirt right here. You know, our Black Latino Spider-Man. He takes a leap of faith. So being a part of Relit was me going to the edge and then jumping and hoping that my wings would grow and that I would get an idea. And you know, I decided to go back to my origins with this story. And my origins also relates to what I do when I'm not writing. I'm a teacher. I've been teaching for almost 30 years. And, you know, I see a through line with kids, especially in the YA and the middle grade market. And that's that a lot of kids don't like to read. And a lot of kids don't like to read white classics. You know, a lot of the young people that I teach every year, they're like me. When I was a young person, I needed a media. I needed media to grab me by my collar and yank me in and not let me go. I needed books that felt like roller coasters. So when the roller coaster, the book was over, I wanted to get right back on. I wanted to read, you know, the story again or read the book again or get a similar type of story or book. And so when I was thinking about being a teacher, I started to think, well, I teach in the school where I was a middle school student. So I'm not going to go chasing, you know, waterfalls like the TLC song. I'm going to think, what story did young me need? And then I started to think about my community. I grew up in the Red Hook housing projects of Brooklyn. It's on the other side of the tracks. When I grew up, to put in perspective racially, it was an all-Black neighborhood with a sprinkling of Latinx families. And the Latinx families were also Black. They were Black Latinx. So the things that I heard growing up, I always say this, so many people who never got their words into published print are amazing storytellers. And I had some amazing storytellers in my community. I remember I was walking by the Red Hook Stadium. And at that time, you did not want to go anywhere near the Red Hook Stadium. Just going into the Red Hook Stadium was like going into the most haunted cemetery. And so I'm there and I'm with an uncle, and my uncle wasn't blood related. He just loved me more than a lot of family. And he is the uncle that's inside the story and that I wrote. So I'm walking with him and he says to me, and this is real life, he says, you see that building right there? And it's the setting. It's the building that my main character has to go into. He says to me, he says, you see that building over there? I said, yeah. He says, something lives in there. And I looked at him, and I was thinking, are you drunk? Are you on something? Like, what do you mean? And he was sober. And he said, that building over there, you wouldn't pay me enough money to go into that building. And that building's the Gray House. And so then I went down that rabbit hole with him of asking him questions. And he told me something that he saw there once. And he said it was like too big to be human. And it was night. It just activated every teen cell in my body that desires action and horror and creepiness. And so when I started to write this story, I thought, what's creepy? What has a monster in it? What possibly was in that actual Gray House that still stands in Red Hook? And I decided to retell the story of Theseus and the Minotaur. And so my story is a story about a Brooklyn Black and Black Latinx community that experiences other side of the track, racism and classism. And it's a creepy story that's kind of like a Candyman, the movie, that talks about how class and race can create labyrinths. They could place people into literal worlds of confusion, and classism and racism also creates monsters. That's not the only thing it creates, though. It also creates heroes. So this boy, I mean, you could picture him. He's like Miles Morales. He is listening to a teacher teach that I try to teach. He teaches the Greek myths, and he starts to talk about the Minotaur. And this boy, this little Miles Morales, he's riveted. And he says, you know, something like that happens in the neighborhood. And the teacher's like, no, that's just make-believe. But it turns out that it's very real. This is a boy who would not take the leap of faith unless it was for someone he really, really is connected to, and it's for his homeboy. His homeboy is missing from school for a days, and he could feel it in his marrow that his boy went into this abandoned factory where something supposedly lives, and he ultimately you got to read and figure out, does he take his leap of faith, and does he go in that building to get his best friend? So this is a story of friendship and how far you're willing to go for your friend, and are you willing to take the leap of faith? And that's something that I want all my students to do, because be it on a small level or be it on something deeply personal or with their ambitions, I want my students to take a leap of faith. So I believe that Trespasses will be something that inspires kids to take their leap of faith.
Wow. Yeah. We're all clapping because I think we just all took a ride right now. Like we all just had an experience listening to you.
I was like, you are scaring the crap out of me, Tori.
Yes.
Literally, I'm like gonna go hide. Wow.
It's because I'm lit. I'm lit for Relit.
Yeah, I'm making notes when I read yours. Leave lights on.
I just love how I asked myself, would I do that? Would I save my friends? The answer is no. The answer is no. So,
yeah.
That's real talk.
yes.
Yeah. We all like to imagine we would, but I think, yeah, the majority probably would be a little scared, but it's powerful and it sounds so amazing. Which Sandra, you know how to choose who should be in an anthology because every single story I've heard sounds amazing. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. I know there's a few other authors that we're missing today. So I can only imagine. Again, congratulations to all of you. Once again, all of these books need to be in every classroom in the world. So yes, we'll figure that out. We'll call my congressman after this. Now I want to move on to the next question, which is, what was the most challenging part in writing your short story and what was the most fun part? So I'll let you ponder for a second and then I'm just going to hit you with whoever. Let's just go with Sandra because I feel like she's ready to go.
Yeah. I know you sent me the questions before. I did send them out to everybody, granted. So, I mean, one of the most challenging parts really was my story was the only one that got submitted with a proposal. And so I had a little bit of a challenge of trying to figure out like how to read a story that like was going to be just, I mean, candidly, like not too much, but not too little, right? And so it did, to go back to the Goldilocks, it had to be kind of like a Goldilocks type of story where I needed it to just be like the type of story that would stand alone, still be like one of those stories where like it just sent me the questions and now I'm like rambling again. But it really just that was kind of like the challenge for me, right? It was just to make it a Goldilocks type of story that would hold its own weight when being submitted with this proposal. And so that was really the biggest challenge. And of course the most fun part of it was that I got to do a post-apocalyptic story. And so that has been like my dream. And of course we know that all of that has been really, really hard. Like science fiction in general has just been so hard to break into. And then when you couple it with being BIPOC writer, it's even harder, right? If you're Latinx, like how many science fiction full length novels do we have at all? Like very, very few. And so that was really the most fun, is getting the chance to explore a post-apocalyptic world and to have it be like my debut story is like literally a dream. And so that's it for me. I'll pass the baton over.
Yes. Well, what about you, Monica?
Well, to be honest, I think the hardest thing was keeping it short. I typically write so long. Like, I mean, this is probably like my second short story ever written. I've always found them really intimidating because there's so much I want to say. So when we got the word limit, I was just freaking out. So then I like reached out to a few friends who like typically write short stories, and they gave me a few tips. So I managed to do it. And then I guess the fun part is that there was so much to work with because I do love Jane Eyre. So it was picking like which of the scenes I love the most, and then how am I going to tie them together to tell the story that I want to tell. Yeah, so definitely the hardest was keeping it short for sure.
Yeah, that sounds like a challenge. It does. How about you, Sadasia? What was the most challenging and the most fun?
I would say I feel like vampires are evergreen, right? I love vampires, so but I was like, oh man, can I even write a vampire story that would still resonate with people? Even though vampires, I think, are having a moment, they're coming back. But I was really worried about that. I didn't want to kind of just outright say Goldie was a vampire. There's a little bit of build up leading up to it, and it gets unraveled really early on. But I was like, I don't know how to do this. I want to, make it fun, but also not give it away because, like Monica was saying, short stories are so hard because you either want to get to all of the action really quickly, or you're like, no, I got enough room to like make this a whole thing, and then you're like, oh, I'm over my word count and now I have to like cut out all of this stuff. So trying to make sure the pacing was right and making sure that I was like unraveling things at the appropriate time was really challenging for me. And then of course the three beats, right? For Goldie, I feel like some people will probably read this story and be like, okay, I get it. Like, I see what you did there. And then other people are going to be like, this makes no sense. Like, this is not a Goldilocks retelling. I know that because I've shared it with family members, and some of them got it and others were like, I don't see it. I don't see it. So I was really worried about that. But I was like, you know what? It's loosely inspired. I've never done this before. I'm satisfied with it. I really enjoyed all of the tasting scenes is what I'll call them. Which was so much fun. And then I think writing the dialogue was also really fun. I got to kind of put a lot of the Bronx young people flair into the story. So that was really fun because there aren't a lot of stories that are set in the Bronx, so we don't get to see a lot of that representation in books, even though there's a lot of New York stories, there's a lot of Brooklyn stories. There's just something about the Bronx that people will automatically know, like, oh, you're from New York, but you're from the Bronx. I can tell because we have this little call that we do, the year, which is in the story. So it's very interesting, but I had so much fun. I had a lot of fun with this story. And also I have to give a shout out to Sandra because she was like, I think you can up it. I think you can do more. I think you can do this. And I'm like, can I? Okay, well, if you're giving me permission, I guess I'm gonna do it. So it was really fun having you as an editor. It was a lot of fun. I don't think I could have done this without you. So thanks again.
I love that so much. What about you, Eric?
Probably the world building was the most difficult part. I write mostly contemporary stories. Most of my books are set in Philadelphia where I live. Like I'm kind of lazy, right? When it comes to my own books. Like I like it to keep it easy and write what I know. So it's sci-fi. It's in the future. That part was really tricky. Uh, and then maybe the most fun part was the world building that involved stuff that exists, right? So like the main character tries to go save a baby whale. So I was Googling whale videos, then I was Googling sub videos, then I was Googling videos about lobsters and how their shells grow. And that part was really fun and made me question my career choices because it was like, wow, I should have done marine science. This is so cool. And watching all those animals underwater on YouTube was a very fun rabbit hole to go down.
Mm,
Sounds
the
like a blast.
relatability. Yeah.
I feel like at one point we all wanted to be a marine biologist. I don't know. Yeah, it feels like, right? I think at one point, yeah. How about you, Tori? What was the most challenging and the most fun?
The most fun was doing the research because I wanted something that was going to raise the hairs on my forearm and on the back of my neck. So I would listen to lots of different podcasts that were talking about lore, talking about stories that have been told in the neighborhood. And that was just a lot of fun. Like, you could picture me curling up in bed with my headset and just being spooked to the point of, okay, now I got to go to the laptop and try to take what's already been created and try to elevate it. And so that leads into the challenging part, because a lot of people here know that I'm known for writing really complex stories, but with a thin page count. I try to keep all my books are 150 pages or less. And the reason is, when I was growing up, I was a reluctant reader. And I just couldn't see myself being a writer. Some great stories are out there that are longer than 150 pages, and some of the people here have created those stories. But I just couldn't see myself being the writer that put out a tome that made kids' lives feel heavy. Because in 30 years of teaching, I know that a lot of kids are like the way I was. I had a very heavy life. And when I came to school, I didn't want a book that was going to weigh me down further. And so my challenge in all my books is to not only write light in page count, but also write light, take heavy topics and make them feel not so heavy. So my challenge was, how do I do that? How do I do what I do with 150 pages? How do I bring it into a short story? Like, I didn't want to sacrifice any complexity. So that was a challenge. But then another challenge was, when I was growing up, anytime somebody tried to talk to me about the racism that I was experiencing or the class differences that I was experiencing, the language was too academic. It turned me off. And when I try to write, I try to write about complex issues, but in a way where kids get it. And that fourth graders and fifth graders are like, oh, yo, wow, I want to read this a second time. So I wanted to talk about race and class in this story, but in a way that wasn't corny. I didn't want it to be heavy-handed. I wanted young people to not even really recognize that the racism and the classism was happening until the end of the story. When they're at the very end, they look back, go, that was such a crazy story. But hold up, wait a minute. The monster was, wait, and then the victims were, oh, so I want that light bulb moment. So yeah, those were some of the challenges.
I'm just thinking how lucky the kids in your classes are, because like, to have a teacher like that who's so aware of just life in general, and even especially the reluctant reader part, because you were one, and so you're like, well, I want you reading stuff that just like grabs you and just doesn't let go. So it's like a really powerful place to write from, honestly.
So Melanie, you're gonna come to my school tomorrow, right? And tell all my classes.
I mean, yeah, I'll jump on a plane. Just give them your book, give them your story, and they'll know.
Thank you. But that's one of the things that I just wanted to add, if I may. One of the things that really excites me about this is that I feel as though Sandra has curated a rare, precious gem that I have not seen in my 30 years of teaching. And I know that librarians and educators who want the classics, but told in a way that appeals to today's youth, they're going to take this gem and hopefully show the world the value that it has.
Well said. And I think you're on the money with that. I think it needs to be everywhere. What about you, Alex?
Why did you pick me to go after Tori? That's just not fair. It's not fair.
Because I still remember that you were the most mortified by the story of the creature in the building.
So I think that the thing that I found most challenging was actually how the mechanics of a time loop works, which, even though I made it up, has to make story sense, and in a largely contemporary setting of New York City and going through the boroughs, I had to figure out how that would work. And sometimes Sandra would be like, does this really work? And I'd be like, you mean it doesn't? And she'd be like, no, fix it. So so that was the most challenging part, but I actually love that challenge because I really do like that, like speculative fiction, sort of like the mix of the contemporary and the, if sometimes you can call it, in some instances you can call it like magical realism, or just this otherness that happens in a contemporary space. So that was challenging. And also because the way that I write is like vibes, 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 and then I pass out. Like that's how I write. That's my writing secret. If anybody wants to pick that up for me, vibes, and then just take it out. And then the most fun for me was actually the creating the art that Graciela shows to Davina eventually, and the art that she presented to try to get into the School of Visual Arts, because I went to the School of Visual Arts. That's my alma mater, and I actually got accepted, but it was hard, and it was also hard to do things that mattered to me. Like, and we've all had this experience of being in a place where you want to try to create art or literature, and you want it to reflect who you are and your culture, and then you're being told for whatever reason that this is not enough. So I felt like that was, even though that was painful for me when I thought about it, it was fun to come up with the kind of, and I'm thinking maybe I should try to create this like in real life, like this sort of like 3D model, sort of light show kind of, anyway. But I think that was the most fun for me. Yeah.
Sounds like a blast, honestly. Yeah, all vibes and then pass out. I think that feels like just a way of life. So I'm here for that, Alex. How about you, David? What was the most challenging and the most fun?
Well, I like Monica discovered when you try to take like a full length work and compress its major plot points into a short story, it's like definitely the pacing changes, which is kind of cool, and you kind of like discard the stuff that doesn't really matter. So yeah, I would say that the toughest part was like taking the entire story of Hamlet and trying to figure a way to squeeze it into this really fast-paced sci-fi story. And Sandra was a big help with that. I'll echo the sentiment of people for somebody who, I mean, this is your, first anthology from a traditional press. You're remarkably adept at editing, and you should be very proud of yourself. You did a very good job. To me, the fun part was, so I will admit to cheating. I actually had created the universe that I set the story in a long time ago, and I've written several stories in it and a couple of adult novels and stuff like that. So it was really cool to be like, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll set it on Mars. I already have, over like decades kind of like figured out a lot of the the culture and so forth, and how Spanish looks in the future and stuff like that. And so it was just really fun, just picking kind of like a random date in the midst of the like massive chronology that I've built over time, and sliding the story in, and it made me feel like, oh, reinvigorate this thing by like maybe I'll start doing more YA sci-fi, because I'll be honest with you, there's not a whole lot of Latine YA sci-fi out there, and it's like one of the big gaps in the marketplace and on the shelves. And the more we can do in that space, the better, I think, for kids. Anyway, so it was a lot of fun doing that and thinking about the implications for future work that I might do.
Yes. What about you, Nonika? What was the hardest and what was the best?
Listening to everybody, first of all, is just kind of blowing my mind. I'm absorbing so many thoughts. Monica, I read Jane Eyre under the table. It was a big tome. It was not the book we were reading, and it was a book of my soul. And I think I'm trying to picture us right now, all of us in here. There's a child just like us in these classrooms. This is a classroom right now. The difference is that they're going to have this book. The book there's an goth Alex in the classroom. There's the nerdy musician David in the classroom. The kid who doesn't want to read the tome, there's that kid in the classroom, right, who wants to read something else. Like, all of us are there. And this anthology, Sandra, came together. Listen to the things people have done. How the hell do you condense Hamlet, David? You know what I mean? It's like, but you did. We've all done these things, right? And Sandra, it's also because of your editing. And I also want to kind of say, a lot of us are talking about permission. Like the permission we got granted to play. with sci-fi, for example, I felt the same way. I'm like, what? Wait, why? I don't write sci-fi. Anyone who knows what I've written is nothing like that. But I thought, well, why not? And the permission couldn't come from someone else. It had to come from one of us, our people. And I know we're a whole rainbow, but it had to come from our people. I didn't hear it from anybody else, no matter what any book had ever said or anybody had ever told me. It was people like us. Donna Higuera is another one I do want to shout out because of the things she's put out there. I'm like, wait, we can do that. And we're grown and we're still needing that message. So imagine the kids who are sitting there and they don't have to wait for it. Some of us waited 20, 30, 40, 50 years before we were able to really permeate that, and say, wait, I can play like that. So I kind of want to first like celebrate what I'm hearing. Like, Tori, that kid that you're talking about who sounds like my son. Yep, he's good. He needs that. He needs exactly the way you're writing it, and everybody here, exactly the way you said it. Like when you explained your own book, is exactly the thing that all these kids need. You're giving it to them. So I think the challenge was I was scared because I was like, this is my first anthology. Y'all are like, I don't know you, and I was like, can I keep up with these people? It's because Sandra's like, why don't you take a classic that's been around for 800,000 million years, you know what I mean? And just disrupt it, just tear it apart. And then also I'm gonna put you alongside Alex Villasante. And by the way, there's gonna be Monica Sands in there and Tori. I'm like, that's it. You're gonna have just like these are just the biggest stars that there are out there. So I want to say that was like the first thing where I was like, I'll do my best. But I think the second thing was a lot of things that all of you were talking about structurally. My story is prose and poetry. So I write in the voice of Edgar Allan Poe in pieces, but then I also have the sci-fi parts that keep it together. And I think Ana Mariano said it. She said it's the connective tissue. And I love, that's her words, of keeping that together. So that was, I think, something that a lot of editors would have had trouble with. And I really appreciate that we had a book in a space where we could say, no, I'm going to try that. I listened to a lot of us talking. We're like, Alex with the time loop, like, okay, but she helps you to put, that's what an amazing editor's for, to take your brilliant idea that you have that is experimental or new or fresh or just hasn't been done, which PS, you're all right. Y'all, nothing anybody has done in this book has been done, period. So there's that, and then I guess the fun part is, okay, so now we're playing, right? And the research and the science, I think Eric was talking about, like learning these things. For me, in my story, there is a light box and the mother has Alzheimer's and does a treatment where the light box helps you to go back to the point where you are cognizant and you are healed. Mm-hmm. And that is based on real science. I listened to that on NPR, and they were using light therapy to help Alzheimer's patients to recover some of their memories. And I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. So my character manipulates the light box and manipulates how her mother gets to use it. But I thought, isn't that what is so amazing about sci-fi is that it's on the border of actually reality the whole entire time. We're just on the cusp, and that could be as far as our understanding of how we're dealing with race and class and how we're communicating that and how we're crushing it, right? And not crushing ourselves, but raising ourselves up and raising our kids up at the same time, because aren't we all tired? Because damn, these past few weeks, but also like, look at what we're doing. Like there won't be a single kid now in these classes. Get this book into everyone's hands, Angela. That will say,
working on it. I'll work on it.
Like they won't say I can't do that because I don't see it. Because I tell you, this is my last kind of comment. I grew up with sci-fi all over because my puppy was a Trekkie. He had Dune and all that stuff all over the place. Big books, big fat books that he carried around. And I have to tell you, he was the only Puerto Rican man that I saw like that. He was my everything. I saw him. He didn't even have to say anything. I just saw it. You see it. You see your face. And you see that book, that's before they even open the cover, y'all. It's so powerful. But I never thought I could do it because school didn't teach me that I could do that. No way, no how. Never. And I have an MFA. And how many of us fought the whole time? So point being that the joy is like, okay, so we did that. Look at the year y'all said we started this. Like we did that. Like everybody here, like I'm so proud. So that's it, you know.
Beautiful. Yep, you guys did it.
we
You
give-
did it. It's beautiful.
Can we give props to Sandra? Because she got us across the finish line.
Mm,
Sandra.
yes. Did we miss anyone with
Amparo?
Amparo? That's what I was. Amparo.
Yes, hello. Hello, Melanie.
Hello, baby.
So to answer your lovely question, first of all, thank you all for sharing your personal stories with your actual stories in the anthology. And I think that's exactly what was the hardest part for me, was the imposter syndrome, not of being part of the anthology per se, because I love fantasy and I'm published in fantasy. It was the fact that our presence is always going to have some sort of impact, and we don't always control that impact. So for me, the imposter syndrome was mostly knowing that this was my very first time contributing to an anthology without having anything to do with editing it. So I was aware that people were going to read something that I wrote among all of these brilliant stories. And just us being there meant something, and will mean something to people that we've never met and probably will never know. That to me is too much responsibility. But at the same time, it's a privilege. And I think that managing or balancing the privilege with the responsibility or the fear of a negative impact or something that just goes wrong and it's out of your hands, that kind of messed me up a little bit. But for the most part, I think I did all right in terms of managing the expectations. And in terms of the most fun is definitely the pining, anything that is romance heavy, but with a dash of unrequited love. It's going to be my jam. So I loved torturing my main character and making her think things that were never going to happen.
Now, I actually want to stay with you, Amparo, for the start of the next question, because I started your story, and yes, I am full of yearning and angst, and now fear. Now fear. Is she not going to get the guy? I don't know. It's feeling like no, but I want to know, what was your favorite scene, or like just general part, or...
I think my favorite scene was a spoiler, so I won't say it. However, everything that has to do with my main character resisting La Bruja, because she works for La Bruja, she finds souls for La Bruja to consume, because that's how she gains her powers or regains her powers. And it's all like a nod to colonialism and all of these lovely things that we're all aware of and we all live daily with. So I tried to be as Amparo as possible, but through someone else. And I think I did all right.
You did great. Sorry, I just have to say you did great. I actually had to go and check if it was you reading, because I was like, I feel like it's the author reading the Audible book. I was like, I have to check, was it you? And also, your
It's
intro.
me. I read all of the audiobooks ever.
Your intro
it's always my voice.
I feel like that intro was just like all the existential crisis thoughts I've had. I was just like, I am seen in this moment. Damn, girl, you went hard there.
You're welcome.
I felt it.
Good. That's all we can ask for, that people feel what we're writing, even if they don't like it.
That's it right there. Yeah, I want to hear from everybody what your favorite scene or part of your story was. It doesn't have to be any spoilers, of course, but just something that made you feel extra excited when you were writing it. Let's go with Alex.
Yeah, so I think my favorite scene, most of it takes place on a bus, so it's not very like varied. But at one point, Graciela and Davina make it to the cloisters, which is this part of the Met Museum in New York City, and it's basically a reassembled European cloister with a lot of like artifacts and art and tapestries and all this good stuff. And Graciela wants to bring Davina there because she wants to sort of explain what art means to her, even though she's had this crushing disappointment. And in that moment where she's showing her this, like, you know, hundreds of years old piece, tiny piece that's really like a miracle, like, I feel like that's the moment, even whether or not Davina understands, ultimately, it's the moment that Graciela like reconnects to her art, and it allows her eventually to say yes after being given that gigantic no. So that's my favorite moment.
Love. What about you, Saritsya?
I think for me, it was really kind of the bathroom scene where Goldie kind of just really loses control. I think for a lot of young people where, I remember when I was young, it was always hold it in, hold it in, hold it in, like, don't let it all out, whatever the emotion is, right? Especially if it's like yearning or anger or just angst, anxiety, like all of it. You're like, I got to keep it together. I got to hold it together. Everyone's watching. People will notice. And throughout the entire story, she's kind of like put in these positions where she's like, oh, so close to like blood, and I want it, but no, don't do it. I'm not gonna do it. Like I want to be out in the world. I don't want to be a vampire. I'm not gonna like, relapse. It's gonna be fine. Like I'm good. And the whole time, and then there's this bathroom scene where it's just like dun dun dun. You thought you were gonna come out and have a good time at this party and not, relapse, not have to like suck up some blood or anything like that. But she just basically loses it in the bathroom, and it was just so much fun to write. And to also like really think about a bathroom. I'm like, okay, yes, I have the sink, I have I have the door, I have the tub. Like, what can she do in this bathroom? But it's also a very contained space, right? And as you know, at parties, people are always clamoring for the bathroom. There's like always a line, and so it's like, how do I make all of this happen without other people like walking in, seeing what's happening? And I'm not going to spoil it for anyone, but someone does walk in, and as you can see, the chaos continues to unravel. And it was just so much fun to do that. I swear, if I could have wrote the whole story in the bathroom, that's probably what I would have done. But it was so much fun. And also to just kind of like play around with her strength as a vampire, where I thought it was a cool play. I don't know if people will pick up on this in the story, but it's kind of like, oh, this vampires are weak usually, right? If they don't eat, if they don't feed, right? And so I don't know if they'll pick up this in the story, but it's kind of like the whole night she is kind of weak because she hasn't had anything, but then she loses her shit in the bathroom, and chaos ensues. And that was really a lot of fun for me to write.
Amazing. I can see your joy and pure like excitement from here, and I feel like more vampires should be in your future. I feel like this needs to happen. So, again, I'll call my congressman to make it happen.
Please do.
I will. How about you, David? What do you have a favorite scene that you wrote?
Yeah, so I mean, it's not a spoiler if you've read Hamlet or if you've seen the films, that obviously, in the story, Lacho, who's Hamlet, that's a nickname for Horacio. Lacho finally figures out the message that his father has left for him, and discovers that his father's personality has been imprinted on a robot. And his father was killed by his uncle Claudio and his mother Gertrudis, Gertrude and Claudius. And so he, with his father, they have to go up to the grave of his father's physical body, because when they killed him, they killed him in a Faraday cage, so that if he had some kind of tracker on him, nobody would be able to find him. But they didn't know that he was transmitting all of his thoughts into this robot. And so to see the final scene of his death, which then they can use and the kind of like play within a play in Hamlet, they can like broadcast it virtually so that people could see it. They've got to like dig his body up and pull this thing out of the rotting corpse of. So it's just a fun scene. They're climbing up this cliff, and he's happy he's with his father, or his father's a robot now, and now they've got to dig up his father and like violate the corpse in this really gross way. And so it's like all these emotions, and it's like grody but also fun. It was really, really cool writing it. Because it's like the reunion of the father, but also there's the corpse of the father, and it's that kind of like cognitive dissonance is fun to play around with.
It sounds really cool. Seriously, I can't wait to finish the stories I've started and like read all of them, because my gosh, guys, it's epic. What about you, Monica?
All of my favorite parts are spoilers, sadly, but I will say, because like I was saying before, I tend to be very wordy. I love words, and descriptions are my jam. So because we had a word limit, the places where I could really go in describing, it was just like gold. I like savored every single word. So I would say my favorite scene that's non-spoilerish is when Paloma first arrives on the hacienda that she's going to, and it was once like this lush forest, and now it's just like all like rotting vines, and like the trees are seeping blood. And I was really able to like go all in describing what it looks like now. So yeah, I would say that's probably my favorite.
I'm so excited to read the rest of this book. I swear, every single story, I'm feeling a little creeped out, but more excited than anything. And I'm here for it. How about you, Sandra?
Yeah, no, it's so funny here. Like the bathroom scene is my favorite. Like the bathroom scene. Oh, it's hilarious. I love it so much. Yeah, one of my favorite scenes is so my character Mimi, she goes out into the desert, and I feel like the desert is such like a lyrical place to write, right? Like it always reminds me of like Mad Max, like where they have like an entire desert. It's just so cinematic and beautiful. And there's this one part in the story where Mimi opens up a box, and it's actually has a little drone inside, and so it's a little drone that's like in the cover, and so her little drone's named Watermercado, and she throws him up, and then she puts on these cool goggles, and one part of the goggle lets her see what the drone is seeing, and I that was just such a fun little scene to write. Like it's something so tiny, but it's so sci-fi, right? And it's I think that was a really cool thing to get to again explore like this kind of sci-fi world, and that was just a little quirky thing that I just loved writing in the story. And so that was just one little tiny scene that just I had fun because it felt like so sci-fi and so like cinematic, and I imagined it, and I feel like sometimes when you write, you just imagine how it would look in like a film or a TV show, and that's kind of what this scene allowed me to do, is just kind of give it a really large scale to the story. So that was fun for me.
Okay, I'm a little afraid to ask, but what about you, Tori? What was your? Is it going to be scarier than the first one?
They say actions speak louder than words. So I think it would be better to read my favorite part. It's only like a paragraph, if I could.
Yeah, please.
I have to say, one of the reasons why I like this part is because the short story on Trespassers Will Be, it's a series of leaps of faith. The boy takes a little leap of faith, then a little leap, and then he leaps along. And this is the part where he takes the leap of faith that is going to lead to some really interesting things. And the reason why I wrote this scene is because this scene is 95% my DNA. I lived this scene. And when I was growing up in Red Hook, Brooklyn, in the projects, everything was concrete. There was brick all around us. And the worlds that we explored were in that concreteness, that stoniness. However, my friends and I, we had this knack for taking something that was known and make it new. Sort of like Relit, right? Take the known and make it new. And so we would, if we saw a factory, it wasn't just a factory that we know. We would find a new way to interact with that factory. I mean, we scale the side of the wall, the wall, and get on the roof, and see what it's like from the roof. So this scene happens, and it's the first time that I discover there's water around my housing projects. There's actual nature there. So I'll read this. When I get to the stadium, it's almost sunset. The gray house, the fence, no trespassing sign. It makes me swallow hard. I peek through its holes at the other side of the junkyard, and I spot another fence. I have to get past this fence, a junkyard, then another fence just to get to the gray house. I look up. This fence is too high. I can't climb it. And the barbed wire on top, it's gonna slice right through my skin. I get this idea, and I get on my knees. I can't believe it. I'm trying to sneak in here. Let me try something out. And I lift the fence until I yank enough up for me to wiggle under. And I do. I inhale real deep and exhale because I'm getting anxious. I talk to myself, calm down. Uncle says, whatever's living in that building, it's not coming out. Just get to the pier. You're not going to the gray house. You're not going in there yet. So if a monster is in there, it doesn't want to be seen. It's not going to come shooting out the building. And if it does, it has to hop that fence and cross this junkyard. By then, bruh, you'll jet, you'll wiggle under the fence, you'll go back into the stadium. So that scene right there is where he starts to go into the labyrinth.
Yeah. I just was expecting you just to keep going. Like I was in the story. That was so powerful. And hearing you say it, hearing you speak it and like feel it. I mean, it felt like you were that kid getting ready to go on this like wild adventure. Amazing.
Thank you. If you think it's amazing and you felt it, it's because I had a really good editor.
I like that. I like it. I like where you're going with that. That's perfect. Yep. I have to agree. I have to agree. Okay. I think did we miss anybody else besides Eric on what was our favorite scene? Nonika, did we get you too? No? Okay. So we'll go with Eric and then we'll move on over to Nonika.
Awesome. I'll chime in and then I'm going to have to go because it is toddler bedtime. But I think my favorite scene, I'm going to chime off of Tori when it comes to having a good editor, has to do with the father in the book. So the adoptive father in the story has a like mechanical like cyborg arm from an accident. And when I wrote the story and I sent it to Sandra, there's a whole thing in there about hearing like him like clenching his fist and like the metal on the hand and everything, and it was all like I tried to get all detailed about the robot and everything. And I remember the note I got back was like, you don't need to describe all that. You have all these sounds in there. So my favorite part in the story now is like when the father gets really mad at this guest that's on the ship, and all you hear is his arm just starting to whir up. It starts to whir up because he's getting angry and he's gonna toss something, he's gonna grab something. So every time he's mad in the book, you just hear this like nefarious like whirring noise because his dad is getting ready to mess some stuff up to protect his kid. And it's a thing I tell my writers in my day job all the time, like lean into your sensory writing because that's where the good stuff is. So thank you, because that's what made those scenes so good.
Yes, I might ask you quickly before we let you go, is there something you would like the readers to take away from your story?
Ooh. Oh boy, I was hoping to bounce off of everybody else when that question came.
I couldn't let you go without asking it. I had to know.
So I feel like a lot of my stories that dig into like identity and adoption are really rooted in the fact that it's okay to not know where you're from, right? It's okay to feel a little unmoored and a little ungrounded. Because fortunately for I don't know, at least for me and a lot of my fellow adoptee friends, you end up having family and friends and people around you who help you figure out that identity, right? And that's a lot of what happens in that story, and it's a lot of what happens to kids who are a little you know, little out on the waves, not sure where they're from.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
Yes, but
Sharing that.
good night, everyone.
Yes,
Okay, wait. Eric, before you
No.
go, I want to take a
Okay.
picture of everybody. Just real quick, Okay,
Yeah,
everybody
I
smile.
love that.
Hold on. The names to go away. Okay, everybody smile. You're good.
Yay.
Good night to the kiddo. Thank you so much, Eric. Bye.
Thank you, Eric. Yay. Okay. All right. Nonika, you're the last one on our favorite scene question.
Let's see. That's so many things are spoilers that it's really, really hard for me. I think when you write something that can be very heavy with issues, sometimes it's hard to remember that it's a love story. Ultimately, I think that almost everything that is beautiful that I've read is there's some core of it being a love story, whether it's the love of yourself, you know, or the love of your people, or just romantic love, you know. So I think just the favorite part of this was that so much of it is just two people in love, and it's just pure, and it's just pretty, and they're just two teenagers who want to go to a star party, and they just want to look at the moon and the planets, and that's the core of like what makes the world go round, is just pure love, being with someone you think is your best friend. So I guess that's part of it. And I was trying to think what my message is, and I feel like it's the message of everybody here. Like, these kids are going to see what looks like betrayal, which is definitely in my story, from people they trust, but there are anchors. And I know that I have an anchor in my story. I love my educators. I'm an educator, and one of those anchors is an educator, and we're out there, and we are, we're here saying, regardless of what's going out there, this is where we are, and we're here for you under all circumstances, no matter what people are requiring of us. But I guess also, no matter what, love's going to find a way. Love's going to win, no matter what's going on politically, no matter what's going on in your school, no matter what's going on, even in home, and those things can be really heavy. The reason why it's always going to win, because we're here, art's here, books are here, our message is here. You can't crush that. You can't stop that. So I think that's the ultimate message, because we don't want to invalidate what kids are feeling. We want to say, you're still going to make it. We're still here for you.
That's it.
That was really powerful. Like, honestly, it's an honor to sit here and listen to all the fire you all are speaking. Like, it's not just in these stories in this book. It's just like every word that comes from everyone is so powerful and so necessary. So thank you all for being so like vulnerable and just open and sharing yourselves right now, because yeah, it's like, I feel like you can feel that. There's a lot of big energy in this, I was going to say in this room, in this Zoom right now, there's a lot of big energy and I'm living for it. What about, who else have we got? I've got Monica here on the screen. So Monica, what about you? Is there something, what would you love readers to take away from your story?
I guess it's funny, it ties into one of my favorite scenes, which I guess I'll try to explain, but it's without spoiling it too much. But it's the scene where someone who's been suppressing something kind of lets it out, and that's like where the magic happens. So for me, that's probably the number one thing that I would want readers to take away, is to not let your gifts and your true self fester. And it's funny because I think just in my writing career, when I kind of like accepted like who I was and started writing more to like my true identity, that's when the magic started happening. That's when the success started coming. And so, yeah, so I would say just be yourself, be proud of who you are, and just like embrace your gifts, regardless of what society says, what parents say, or just, stay true to yourself.
Beautiful. That's it right there. How about you, Amparo?
So I think it's similar to the concept itself of the anthology. You can always retell something, but as long as you know your truth, no one can invalidate it, regardless of what they think or what they try to silence. And I think that my main character, since she is so angry and she's frustrated and she feels like a failure because she's let her parents down, she is letting her crush down by not saving him. So she feels like this burden is always going to be on her and she's always going to have a target on her back. But if you ask other characters about her, they're not going to have the same story. So you're always going to have your own narrative, and it's valid and it's necessary. But if no one agrees with you, that does not make you inherently wrong. So.
Yes, my queen. I just like
You're welcome.
I'm just in awe. Can I just listen to you all talk all day?
No.
Okay, next person. Next person I want to hear from is Alex.
Yes, I also want to stay here all day and listen to all y'all, because I'm like practically in tears here and I love all of you. It's ridiculous. I would say that the message that I would like readers to come away with is that there is power in saying no, There is power in rejecting the norms that are set for you. There's power in that resistance, but at the same time, there is also beauty in finding your yes. And I feel like sometimes when we are so resisting, and that is what we need to do, because this world will roll over us if we don't resist. But also there can be room for that yes in another way. And so finding that yes and what that means for you, I think is important.
Amazing. Wow. Yeah. How about you, Sadasia?
I agree with what everyone has been saying so far. I guess when it comes to my story, the one thing I want them to take away is it's okay to lose control sometimes. I think sometimes it's the best release, like visit a rage room and go break some stuff. Like you gotta let that stuff out, however you gotta let it out. Yeah, and then, at the end, it's all going to be okay. I think it's kind of a little bit of a happy ending at the end of the story because Goldie leaves in one piece and her prima doesn't necessarily find out what happens. But there's also like a slight twist at the end where it's like, okay, well, that also happened. But yeah, I think I want readers to just take away, like, it's okay. Like, you lose control sometimes. I think, of course, we do have to, like, not let everyone in our lives in on certain things about our lives for whatever reason, whether it's to protect them or to protect yourself. Like, that is equally okay, but don't let it bottle up inside if you're feeling feelings about it. Like, figure out a way to have an outlet where you can go ahead and just let loose, I think, is what I would want readers to take away from that.
Powerful.
Yes. It is writer therapy hour here right now. Like, this is like, we all need to hear it. What about you, Tori?
The thing that I want young readers to take away from my story is don't let fear hold you back. Don't let fear hold you back from friendships. The boy in the book, he hangs out with a kid who's considered an oddball. He's considered a weirdo. He's not a part of the cool club. Don't let fear hold you back from being an oddball and from being weird. The main character, he wears sci-fi shirts all the time, Stranger Things, you name it. And he gets teased for it. Don't let fear hold you back from dressing differently. Don't let fear hold you back from exploring new places. This is a tale about going into the labyrinth, but it's also a tale about going out of bounds in many different ways, going out of bounds with your identity, going out of bounds with, so many things. So yeah, the message is, don't let fear hold you back. Be a trespasser. That's why it's called Trespassers Will Be. So, will you be, in your box, or will you trespass and be out the box?
Love it. I'm here for it. I love it. All right, Sandra, tell us
Yeah,
what
I mean,
you take from your story,
yeah,
or
yeah,
the
I mean,
anthology in general, or all.
yeah, I mean, I would say, the anthology in general, again, you can be the hero of your own story, whatever it is, whatever you're feeling, you are your own hero. And that's really the biggest thing, is that I want really all teens, but especially Latinx teens, to really find that you have a voice that matters. You are heroes that matter, and you are going to hopefully, I want teens to see themselves in these stories and to feel that way and to feel like they can go. And, at the end of the day, really, like, I also want kids that might be reading the anthology to know that they can do this too. And I feel like that's so important for kids to see themselves not only on the page, but to see all of us succeeding on the page. And for all Latinx kids to be able to say, if I want to be a writer, I can be a writer, because here are 16 people like me that are part of my community that have done this. And I think that that's also what I want all the kids to take away from this anthology, is to see us all, on the page, in the page, and to really know that they can do this, because it's, as we all know, publishing is a really tough industry, but it's possible, and we're all here. And I feel like, so many folks have come before us, and this will hopefully help folks that come after us as well. And so that's really what I want teens and other Latinx writers to take away from the anthology.
Beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I believe we've finished with our general questions. We ran a little long, but who cares? Because you guys had so many amazing things to say. Honestly, every second has been beautiful and so powerful and special to watch you guys celebrate this amazing anthology. Again, congratulations. I don't know if there were any questions that you received, Sandra, or okay, we're good on that. Okay, well, how about let's just before we close off, I'd like everybody to tell our listeners or whoever's watching or listening where they can find you. And then also purchase everything you've ever written would be great as well. So Alex, where can listeners find you?
So on social media, I'm at Magpie Writes. And then on my website, alexandravillasante.com.
Perfect. How about you, Monica?
You can find me on Instagram at author Monica Sands and at monicasandsbooks.com.
Amazing. How about Tori?
Hey, you can find me on social media at Tori Maldonado. And that's on Instagram and X, even though I got some friends who say you need to be off of that. and and I'm also very approachable on my website, ToriMaldonado.com. People usually look at that author's page and they say, if I email it with you there, does it go to, somewhere in cyberspace and get lost? And I'm like, no, actually it goes straight to me and I respond. So yeah.
There it is. All right. Sadasia?
You can find me on the socials at SJ_Fennell, or you can visit my website. Ceresia, I'm sorry, there are a lot of vowels, so just make sure you put them in the right place. My name breaks the rule. It has the I and then the E, but CeresiaFennell.com. But reach out to me on social. All of the other links will be linked in the link tree or whatever I have up there. So again, SJ_Fennell.
Perfect. Thank you, Ceresia. Amparo?
So I am mostly Amparo_Ortiz everywhere except for TikTok because someone stole my name. It's Amparo_Ortiz_author on TikTok and AmparoOrtiz.com.
How dare they steal your name?
I know, it's
again,
so rude.
I will contact my...
Yes, thank you. I need that solved.
Nonika?
So it's Nonika Ramos and NONIEQA. Like Tori, I do also like getting things on my website and I do respond, and that's the most fun place to connect. So yeah, and social media is the same, Nonika Ramos.
Amazing. And Sandra, you are last.
Yes, at Sandra Proudman, literally my whole name everywhere that you can imagine. I am on Blue Sky. I don't really use them ever, but I am on there. If you've left X already, connect with me. But yeah, thank you. Definitely connect with us. I just, before we close off, I just want to say one more time, thank you all so much. You're freaking amazing. Truly, truly, truly. So thank you all. I'm excited to celebrate the US launch, and apparently we're gonna be in the UK too on March 28th, which is exciting. And so if any listeners are UK listeners, you can find Relit not on today, February 6th, but March 28th, it's going to be our launch day in the UK, which I'm really excited about. And, Angela, Melanie, thank you so much to you for hosting us. I'll let you two close it away. Thank you, everybody.
Oh my gosh, it was our honor. And also I'll make a note that I'll put your socials and links to buy the book when I drop the episode. So listeners, you can click through. If you missed the spelling of something or whatever, I'll put links in so everyone can find you. But yeah, honestly, it was our freaking honor. And I feel just so grateful to hear all these amazing words and just cheering for you all.
Yeah, 100%. Congratulations. You guys did the damn thing.
Yeah.
Thank
Amazing.
you for having us.
Aw. Well, have a
Group
good evening,
cheers.
everybody. Thank you.
Woo.